All right, we are live. All right, everyone, wherever you are, whoever you are, welcome to Millstone-SRG. The SRG stands for Self-Reliance Group. We are your hosts. We're just two guys, regardless of our backgrounds. We're just two guys, put our pants on like everybody else, just trying to find our way in this world and make sense of this madness and find a way to, take care of, take care of our community, right? I'm one of your hosts. I'm Mark, and this is
Blake. So, hi guys, welcome to the show tonight. We're going to kind of just sort of chit chat a little bit about what we talked about last week and kind of expand into that, into some of the preparedness and things that you can do from your community and those around you to kind of get ready for what may come after the fallout of certain events. So, like we talked about last week, a lot about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. A lot's happened since then. Like we kind of touched a little bit on the cyber outages that were happening, or cyber attack, whatever you want to call them, to the uncertainty around our current sitting president, whether he had a health crisis or not, whether he was able to continue his duties as the POTUS, and what that was going to mean for his campaign. And then we got news in a very obscure way through a Twitter handle that he had actually resigned from the race, so that he could better perform his duties over the course of the next 99 days as of today. So, and on top of that, because why not, Yellowstone in, I can't remember, Biscuit Basin actually had a little bit of an issue and popped its top a bit. It was kind of exciting. So, why not throw a little natural event into what's just happening domestically, let alone to say what's happening across the pond right now. So without saying much more in any one specific thing, I'll send it over to you, Mark.
Well, I'm just going to kind of follow up on just a handful of things. So again, tonight, it's not clear if we're going to have George, aka Triple X, and if he does come on, we'll explain his nickname. It has nothing to do with pornography. It's actually from I can't remember that movie, that actor's name, Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel.
Yeah. He did a movie called Triple X, and I won't tell the story unless George is here because it's kind of funny, and we were together overseas when that kind of happened. But we might get Triple X on here. He's kind of traveling, and the same with Patrick. Again, we're trying to use our background, and we're trying to use modern technology to. And look, we're just figuring this out. We don't know. We don't have the answers yet. We're not 100% sure. Blake's got a life, a business he's trying to run. He's got a newborn. It's the same, just like you guys who are watching this, right? We're all busy, right? And everybody's got things going. But we might have Triple X and Patrick on. We'll just see. But our goal tonight, and something that Blake just said, is, last episode we used the attempted assassination of former President Trump, not for political sake, right? If you want politics, there's all kinds of other people out there doing that on social media. That's not, and never has been, our intent. However, as we start breaking this down, if we start looking at, well, what is the crisis? What are the types of events for which you are preparing? What is it that you think you need to be self-reliant? Or do you think the government's just going to handle all this stuff for you? Like, no matter what happens, the government's got your back. I mean, that's, I kind of want to bring that back over to Blake for a joke, because that's an obvious joke. I mean, that was dripping with sarcasm. And I think where we wanted to start off, again, is just to focus on what took place just over 14 days ago now, just over 2 weeks. It's been just over 2 weeks. And do you, whoever you are, wherever you are on this blue marble of a planet, do you feel like you've been informed? Do you feel like that the United States government and the entities within it that are responsible for either providing the security for presidential, just for all their protectees, right? Because it's more than just the president and his or her family, or the people who are doing investigations, or the people who are making decisions. I guess I'll kind of turn this over to Blake, because you just brought up POTUS a second ago, and just this recent event. I mean, to me, Blake, the real question isn't, and as we kind of did last time, is there some deep state conspiracy? I don't know. I'm not inside of that investigation. I don't have privy to it. I don't have access. However, there's a lot of really smart people on social media who can look at the same footage. They don't quite have some of the same technology. They don't have some of the same inside information as regarding, TTP, so tactics, techniques, and procedures. So they're not fully aware and fully vested in, in what these government entities are doing. But for all of us, if you just take a step back, And here we are 14 days later. And do you feel like you're any closer to understanding what transpired 2 weeks ago, Blake?
Well, no. And that's actually kind of one of the problems. If you look at any other major event that's happened in the past in the United States, whether it's a, false flag or something that very serious happened, we always had information about it pretty much within 24 hours. Some kind of official government response. It was X that did it on Y, utilizing Z. There was some kind of story. Even if the story was complete hogwash, there was a story. And we haven't gotten that story yet. And instead, we've had finger pointing, we've had obscure video, grainy clips, social media talking openly about it. And the problem is even if it's a non-believable narrative that the government has put out, it doesn't exist, which means people are going to speculate. They're going to make these conspiracies. It's going to become a more tumultuous environment simply because everyone's going to be going, no, I heard it was this. No, it was this. So we're obfuscating the data that is out there. And I think that maybe even is by design right now, maximizing potential chaos, if you will. I mean, if these are truly agents of chaos, if the goal was beyond just the assassination of a presidential candidate, if you were looking for the fallout and what would happen after that, this actually serves to their means the best possible. And I'm not saying there's some single cabal. In fact, I think there's probably multiple conspiracies, multiple entities that are all kind of vying for power right now. And we're even seeing some of that behind the scenes in the drama that's unfolding in these United States of America. No.
So on right there, what if it is by design? And then later in this podcast, and we're going to keep this to an hour, under an hour tonight, for tonight. Last time it was long because we had a really great panel of guests, and we wanted to give everybody time. Tonight it's going to be shorter. We'll keep this to about an hour, but near the second half of tonight, we will go over some things like, and to get you thinking, like, what is it that you, the viewer, whether you're watching this right now live or if you're watching this on demand afterwards, just as a regular video, you should be asking yourself, because to Blake's point right there, and then he also had mentioned POTUS, and, I want to bring in, so this was my background, right? For whether it was the military or the agency, there's clearly a national security issue here, right? And, so there's a couple different ways to unpack what Blake just said. Maybe you think that if you believe that there's going to be some type of impending disaster or danger, and you need to be self-reliant so you can take care of you and yours in that situation, well, you've got to try to, okay, well, what is that's going to happen? And to Blake's point, it could just be somebody looking at like, holy shit, from a national security perspective, we are incredibly vulnerable and there's all kinds of confusion, and your enemies will try to take advantage of that confusion. Now, that's on a higher level, and, it might be a low probability, but the consequences of those type of events would be horrendous. All the way over to maybe you do think this is a deep state type of event, and this was perpetrated and done by a cabal, and they're doing this to sow confusion so other things can happen. And there's other reasons too, but we'll get back to that. So I thought that, Blake, you bringing it up was a great point right there. Triple X is here with us, and we only got a limited time. So what we're going to do, boys and girls, I'm going to bring on George. Matter of fact, and maybe we'll start off. George, you can hear me down there, right, brother? You got me? Yeah. Okay. George, maybe when you come on, because you introduced yourself last time, maybe we just make sure everybody knows that Triple X isn't because you're a porn star. And maybe we just start off you telling what he's laughing. Let's bring George on. Yeah, he's shaking his head at me.
Hey, bud.
Hey, George, what's going on, my good man? Hey, everybody who saw the first episode got your background, but why don't we start it off with a little bit of joke? Because something Blake and I were talking about yesterday, and again, Blake and I have been talking about these type of things for years, and hopefully you and your friends are talking about it. We're talking about those people, and if you go back and watch the original Seven Samurai, right, the Japanese, the Kurosawa movie, one of the members that they select to be the samurai to go off and do it is based on because he can make people laugh. And like in the moment, when everything just sucks, he's the guy who's going to bring about like some dark humor joke. And that is vitally important, especially during a crisis. Triple X, you want to maybe talk about where the Triple X nom de plume or nom de guerre or whatever comes from?
Well, I think that was your little nickname for me, just because you said I was like one of the most extreme people who just has like a variety to go every which way, especially the day when we had the meeting with the colonel and other people and they were talking circles and I raised my hand in the back and you just started chuckling. It was like, did you just raise your hand? And I'm like, yeah. And I gave an answer and you're like, okay, I'm the fuck out of here. George's got everything. And just take orders from him. And I'm just like, okay. And then when I got back to the tent, you're just like, you're one of the most extreme dudes I've ever met in my entire life, man. Triple X. And I was like,
Triple X. And because that was about the time that really bad movie came. Well, and maybe it's not that bad, maybe, but Vin Diesel.
I love that movie.
You like that movie, Blake?
Heck yeah, the scene with Rammstein in the club is awesome. Like,
there you go.
Oh.
So that's George right there. Like, you know, next thing you know, he's trying to drive a freaking MRAP like it's some like race car, and then he's raising a question to ask a Fullberger.
Gets it across.
Yep, it does. It does. And I think that's how Triple X came to be. All right, George, I know you got a limited amount of time. So you kind of heard part of the intro. So we're not going to spend a lot of time focusing on the attempted assassination. We kind of did that. And truth be told, there are a bunch of other channels out there who are dedicating their time and their energies, and they're doing that, right? And we're trying to, develop, Millstone-SRG is more about trying to get people and sharing our backgrounds and our knowledge to maybe give people some skills that help them in their self-reliance and their preparedness and all of, everything that entails. So where do you want to start? But I want to maximize our time on target with you here tonight.
I would start. There's a couple things I read today. One I read maybe about an hour ago. I don't know if you guys have seen the interview with the SWAT officers that were at the Trump rally, and the information that was been pushed out by the Secret Service and the FBI prior to the FBI investigating and finally coming out yesterday saying, yes, Donald Trump was struck by a bullet from a rifle, which is, I think, kind of funny. But during the interview with the SWAT officers, every one of the SWAT officers stated that they had zero communication with the Secret Service, and where the Secret Service and FBI have said, hey, we had full communication with all the local police. This is what we were doing. And also a letter was produced by the chief of police stating that he offered all of their drone operators to be there and provide aerial surveillance, help out with everything else like that. And the Secret Service and FBI also stating, hey, nobody ever offered us any help. We were pretty much on our own. And now this chief basically said, hey, we're not going to dump on my people, and proved that this letter was sent and shows a response back from the Secret Service stating, yeah, we don't need any of your help, and this is not what we need. So to me, it's an eye-opening. If it hasn't been already, people need to really open up their eyes and go, okay, hey, why, going right back to what Blake was saying, why is the government lying to us and blatantly lying to us?
Well, and just before you go any further, somebody who watches this later might say, come on, Triple X, the government isn't lying to us. There's lies, there's straight out lies, and there's lies by omission. And so I think, the point you just brought up with that is like certain details are being omitted, right? Because they don't want, that's still a lie, right? That's still a form of subterfuge.
You're hiding a truth. And the thing is, the more you hide that truth of what everyone watched, if you're a normal person who sits there and goes, okay, why haven't we had a press conference about this? Why haven't we done this? It's been immediate that when this became a fire, all of a sudden Biden, I'm going to drop out. And now, we're throwing Harris in there, and you see it all over social media, and it's almost to the point to where you're listening to everything's been pushed. Hey, she's never been down to the border, or she wasn't the border czar. But you go back months and you see where that was at. And now all of a sudden it's the same narrative. I mean, there's a clip with like 40 different anchors saying the same thing. Hey, now the Republicans are going to be racist and sexist because they don't want a black female as the president of the United States. I'm going, hey, I don't care if you're green. I don't care your color, your race. But if you're not doing something to better our country and make us stronger, and you can see the narrative being spun around it. Obviously, there's more to it than what anyone else is opening up this can of worms to go, hey, we can't beat Trump, so we figured we'd go ahead and kill him, and we fucked up, didn't do it, and now we gotta run, we gotta scramble, we gotta push out as much smoke as possible and hope that no one asks any more questions or say, hey, well, what really happened there? Because still no one's coming out to say anything, and to me, it's just mind-boggling.
Well, and what's crazy to me too is, I mean, how close we came to having most likely a Nikki Haley Kamala Harris ticket. I mean, you think about the utter chaos that would have happened if we would have been moving into an election cycle near the 250th year of our country's existence, where neither of the candidates were, gone through the proper process to be on the ballot. I mean, that's basically, I don't know, man. It seems like we're really getting to a point now where it's, hey, this is what you're going to do. This is do as you're told. So, we're kind of speculating right here, and, I don't have a crystal ball, Triple X has got all kinds of, he's a crystal ball juggling mofo. But,
yeah.
But to what Triple X and Blake just said, what do you, the person watching, do you have any idea? Can you say with 100% certainty? Because you need to be able to say with 100% certainty, and that's almost impossible to ever do. But in order to ensure that there is no negative fallout, ramification, some type of social unrest, or some type of incident that precipitates another incident, which then leads to, maybe a global conflict. These are vitally important questions to me. When you go through your decision-making process, right? It's called MDMP. So you may have heard it, military decision-making process, but there is a process for how you would look at these questions, these situations, and then evaluate them, score them, and then so you can better determine where you can focus your limited time and your limited resources. Because unless you're Elon Musk, and you can hire everybody to do everything for you, and then you can focus on improving just you, the person. That's not who most of us are. And so I want to I thought it was neat that you guys both just said that, but then bringing it back over to Triple X, and Blake, you just kind of said it too. There's a national security aspect to this. There's uncertainty. There are people, I mean, you guys just said it, and I know there's people who are going to disagree and say, well, that's not how our primaries work and whatever. And it's like, Kamala Harris got 0 delegates. I mean, but she now suddenly is the party that, so honestly, I'm okay with that argument, because why are we paying the RNC or the DNC tax dollars? Those aren't federal organizations. So putting that aside though, so I just kind of want to come back and bring it over to, George again, and well, obviously Blake, as well. But if you are the person who is looking at the world around you and you're taking this event of 15 days ago, and we're 99 days away from call it 100 days, it's 99 days actually, as Blake pointed out, 99 Luftballons, right? Which is a song about all kinds, just go listen to that song in German too. But if that's where we are, Triple X, and you're a person who's concerned, and you think that politically that the biggest danger we face, as whether it's a nation, a person, a community, a family, however you want to break that down. And if you think politics is really becoming one of the more probable negative outcomes that's going to result in some type of violence or chaos or civil unrest, how do you respond to that?
I say just be prepared. And I don't mean it in a, hey, I'm sitting in my house and crying and shaking and wondering what's going to come. I look at it like this. Unfortunately, and I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, I really don't give a shit. Mm-hmm. The bottom line is there's evil on both sides. And when you go to the point where you're trying to murder somebody, and then you read all the comments, too bad the guy missed, and there's so much hate towards one person, it makes you wonder, if you messed up that bad and you had the opportunity to do it, what's going to be the next thing that we're going to try to do to beat somebody or to provide or prevent anything? And the only reason I say this is and I don't know if you guys have watched the speech from the Prime Minister from Israel, who came in and fucking just basically called our country the biggest pussy whipped country that is floating around right now, by talking about he's tired of hearing gays for Palestine. He's tired of watching our country be desecrated by spray paint burning our flags. How dare you allow this to happen? And reference it as that's like saying chickens for KFC. It's bullshit. He's not even meeting with our president. He's not meeting with our vice president. This dude went down to Florida to meet with Trump and his family last night. He doesn't even respect our government. He's going to Trump to talk to him to be like, hey, how do we better fix some problems over there? And I hope that you get elected president so we can unfuck all of this. And to me, that's one of the biggest slaps in the face I've seen in our country in a very long time, when our own government, our leaders of the free world, are not even being respected enough to say, hey, I appreciate what you do, because he sees what's going on and he's like, I'm not even going to bother wasting my time.
I don't know. We don't necessarily have to go down the political rabbit hole here, but Blake, I know, based on our conversations, you've got a slightly different take on that, on Netanyahu's visit. So do you want to chime on that at all?
Well, more than anything else, actually, what I really want to touch on, what George was talking about, is how we're viewed on the world stage.
Yeah.
Because he's dead on there. And that's really, at the end of the day, whatever you think Bibi's speech was or wasn't is irrelevant to the fact that we are showing weakness on the American stage. And we used to be that top dog. I'd like to still think we are, but that spot isn't as solid anymore. I mean, we're seeing it from multiple different angles on where we weaken, and how the world stage views us and how the world leaders view our leaders is very, very concerning, because it shows up weakness. It does not telegraph what we want as strength for the nation. And to that point, it kind of leads into what we're talking about here later on in this hour. And that is, getting prepared, because if something were to break out, if another near peer power wanted to actually make a move, now's a pretty good time to. Would have been a great time had our presidential candidate been shot and our sitting president had an actual medical emergency that we've been made aware of. It would have been true chaos. So, I mean, this whole situation right now is ripe for some turmoil, and yeah, it's concerning for sure. So,
and I want to kind of move it. So we're talking kind of on a political level, but this is on strategic, and I want to kind of bring it back down into like more of the theater or your local battlefield, community type of perspective. You guys are both saying it though. If we're suffering from this level of confusion and WTF over, like, we don't have so kind of Triple X, you just brought it up, Blake, you just said it, kind of hope we're still the big dog. Hey, but if we are watching the premier protective detail, the protective service detail, in the world, that's what we think of it ourselves, right? Maybe there is somebody who does a better job of at protective detail than our Secret Service, but we've always thought our Secret Service was top freaking notch, right? Just like we think our CIA and our FBI, but we're seeing definitely some changes over the last couple decades that make everybody scratch their head. And again, putting the politics aside, we hear people talking about it, but our military capabilities and would people actually fight? I remember, I may have said it last time or on a different podcast. I took leave en route from a theater. I don't think it was with me and you, Triple X. I think it was a different one. And I took leave en route, and I was able to go to Normandy for actual Normandy D-Day celebrations. And, I was probably on my sixth, downrange combat tour type of thing. And I'm looking at, I'm like, oh, hell, man, how did those guys do it? So now fast forward, so that was back in, before 2010. So now fast forward, another 20, plus years, or 14, 15 years since then. And how much has that rot taken hold? So if you think about our previous episode, we were all kind of focused on, hey, don't necessarily attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence. It has that incompetence become such a rot. So then, and the reason I'm saying that was a long-winded way to get to this. So take a look at your local community, whether that's the city level, the county level, the state level. How are your leaders going to respond if there's a natural disaster, if there's an ice storm, a hurricane, and we've seen that happening and displaying or presenting itself over the last couple of years as well with, 200,000 people still without power in Texas because, so you see where I'm kind of going with this. Do you guys want to jump in on that?
Well, yeah, I'll actually take one quick point to that because I'll even take it further than just the governmental side. And I think I may have talked about this a bit last week, but it's not just your bureaucrats. It's not just your military positions. It's your engineers. It's the guys running the factory line. It's the person that's working down at the corner store. You know, nobody is an expert anymore because a lot of them retired. I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of the experts have retired when the COVID time happened. And then you have all of the other people that weren't quite trained up to the same level. So they don't know how to run the complex systems. So then the legacy technologies, they start to get, deteriorating. They start to break down. The infrastructure starts to break down. So I think it's a lot bigger than just even what the government can do. It seems like every facet of society right now is taking a diminishing return generation over generation. Oh,
Triple X.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And the thing is, it's kind of like readiness test, as we always talk about. Hey, we're going to do a fire alarm. Why are we doing a fire alarm? Well, because so everyone knows what they're supposed to do. I know some of my local police and stuff, they don't do any of that stuff. It's all put down in a policy and procedure. Hey, if this happens, this is our plan. But there's never any, hey, let's run a drill. Let's see what happens. Let's make sure everyone is on board and has an idea of what we're going to be doing. And people see it. I mean, everybody sees it. And you look at stuff. If we see it and we're having it on our social media, how does China not know? How does Iran not know? How do all these other countries not know that we're not prepared? And they look at our leadership. Your countries, as everybody says, your men are as good as their leaders, And if we don't have good leadership and we got a lot of people thinking, oh, well, the government will take care of me. Well, when everything fails and the government is not there to take care of you and you haven't prepared, what is that going to look like? To me, in my head, even stretching it far out, it's kind of like Mad Max. It's kind of like, that's why I tell Alyssa, you might not know how to call wind. You might not know how to do whatever. I got the spotting scope. I just tell you what to put on the rifle and you press the trigger. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. I can keep people at bay for a very long time. And if she doesn't have the guts to do it, I'll call my own wind and I'll do what I need to do to protect my family, because I'm not going to let anybody roll up in here and be like, well, I'll take his food, I'll take his water, I'll do this. Well, that'll be over my dead body. But if it ever gets to that point, to me, that's the extreme. But I think at times where we look at everybody, and when I say everybody, government-wise, they all have a plan for themselves, not for the people below them, and they know where they're going to go. And to me, that's where our leadership is failing, because they care about their bubble. They don't care about the people that they're supposed to be serving every day.
So 2 points, because I like what you said there, but 2 points about the Mad Max thing. Silver lining, man, we could all have some pretty sweet rides. So, I mean, there's always a silver lining to every apocalypse, right? Because I wouldn't mind rolling around.
Hang on, Blake, you don't even know this. That put a smile on Triple X's face, because he made a couple sweet rides for me in a certain spot. Yeah, he is mad. He's got a little Mad Max mechanical shit.
You got a little bit of a greasy thumb, do you? I like it.
Oh yeah.
So.
Hey George, I need this thing tricked out. We got to be able to do this, and this. Okay, boss, I got it. Next thing you know, like, what the hell? Like, nice.
To that point, though, like if we ever do, unfortunately, God forbid, find ourselves in that Mad Max situation, hopefully we're not moving into it as just a single family unit, but we're moving into it as communities that we've already established leading up to that, where we're ready to help each other out. We kind of know, what is that division of responsibility? Like, hey, he's really good with being a carpenter. This fellow over here, he's great at commo work. And, finding those pieces, helping each other out, knowing where your niche is. Because I think going into that situation with a community is ultimately going to be a hell of a lot better than just you or your family.
Mm-hmm. So. Absolutely.
Hey, one thing I just want to bring back up that both you guys were addressing, and maybe I'm beating this horse to death. Maybe we've already made this point clear, but to me, I don't think we have as a society. I think there's still people who don't get this, or who are unwilling to, pull the veil away from their eyes and actually see it for themselves. But, George, you were talking about, like, it's an IGM, I've got mine attitude. Mm-hmm. Our political and bureaucratic governmental worker leadership, leadership, I use that term very loosely, bureaucrats, it's IGM. They don't give a shit. I mean, like I saw this in the agency. I just actually heard Bongino in his podcast the other day talking about what he saw in the Secret Service. George, I'm sure you're seeing it still. Blake, I'm sure you've seen it at the local, state, and county level. I'm not really concerned about taking care of my constituents or the people. I'm more concerned about covering my ass until I can get into a position. So if I leave this job, I'm going to make a shit ton of money on the outside world. And so instead of doing what was what was right, and doing what's right is usually the hardest thing, right? If it was easy, then everything would be right all the time, right? Doing what's right is difficult. But, if you look at, again, just the upper echelons of the agency, the bureau, the Secret Service, and so that's got to be a departmental and agency level thing too, because these guys aren't all political appointees. These are people who've risen through the ranks, and now here they are, and they're more concerned about setting themselves up, to get a job in the military industrial complex or some other industrial complex. Like now we've got a pharmaceutical industrial complex. So I just wanted to point that out because, we've already so quickly and so easily have allowed ourselves to be moved off the X of, the bullshit of the last few years. And so many people were so adamant. There were so many people who were willing to use violence to either attack you online or physically attack you if they saw you outside. And yet now here we have all of these people like, oh, I never said that. And then I think it was you, Triple X, talking about all the little mashups of Kamala, all the things that when they call her the border czar, now they're saying she's not. It was the same thing with all that leadership throughout that period of time. No one in the government is ever held accountable. And instead, even when they're found wrong, like Peter Strzok or whatever his name is from the FBI, I just saw that he got a $2 million, he got like some huge settlement because in a court of law, his text messages came out, proving what they were trying to do, but he somehow was able to sue the FBI or the government and he got a huge settlement out of it. So these people, all I'm trying to do, that's not politics there, boys and girls. If you think I'm being political, that's the same on both sides. I've got equal disdain for Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, and Dan Crenshaw as I do for Jerry Nadler, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer. I have equal disdain for all of them. I would never trust them with anything of value to me, not even like cooking my food. I mean, that was actually, I didn't even plan it. Yeah, because we already know Schumer doesn't know how to barbecue. Guys throwing raw meat and cheese on a grill, like whatever. Those people don't care about us. So when it comes to your self-reliance, that's all I'm really trying to point out here is, and Blake said it and Triple X said it, these people are in it for themselves. That's it. Plain and simple. So I'm imploring everybody to take a step back and actually say, Mark's full of shit. The government's going to take care of me. Then go look at these guys and look at their actions. Just go look at their actions, what they say and what they do. And then ask yourself in a crisis, do they really have your interest at heart? Are they really going to come and actually take care of you?
Well, it reminds me of that, the quote, I don't remember what it's from, but anytime the government says it's here to help, it's time to turn around and run.
Triple X, we know it's like the worst words you ever hear from, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. That's when you're just like, shit, we're screwed.
Yeah.
So, Triple X, where do you want to go? If you want to do you want to do anything that, I have watched a bunch of, some pretty smart people doing some pretty good analysis on the presidential, the attempted assassination. Do you want to focus on that a little bit, or do you kind of see where Blake and I are moving this a little bit? Because we're setting this up for what we're going to do next week is, we're not even going to talk about the subject anymore. We're going in to now actually, okay, here's a class I wrote back in 2014. I'll probably have to make some adjustments because, I'm talking about things like hurricane, it's old, outdated. There's more things that are going on today. But where do you want to go? Do you want to go with more in your real world experience because you're still in the fight and what you've seen and how that could be something that you could share to make people open up their eyes? Or do you want to focus a little bit more on the attempted assassination just to kind of poke some holes into if you think the government's here to help and they're going to help you out,
But I think between just the beginning of this and then all last week, honestly, we've turned everything that the government's doing into Swiss cheese. That's my personal opinion. And one of the reasons why I say that is going with what Patrick was talking about, putting not even your B team, but your C, D, and F team there on purpose for whatever reason, and saying, hey, we had to pull all resources for, the president's wife. She should already have her own detail when anything's going. It shouldn't be, hey, we had to pull every total resource that we had in that area. I mean, give me a break. There's plenty of guys who are sitting on the bench in Virginia, in Maryland, close by, that they could have been like, hey, pack your bag. You already know that you're on a 24-hour friggin' call anyway. Get your ass in gear, get there, and this is what you're doing for a day, whether you want to or not. That's what you sign up for. And looking at everything, that's one of the reasons why I sent you that message about that gentleman Maxwell Yerk. They're basically a good resource came out and said that's the gentleman who really shot at Trump. And they have proof. They looked at his tattoos on the body. Unfortunately, for the Secret Service and FBI, that body cam footage that was forced to be released shows a tattoo on his arm. It's on his left arm, and it matches perfectly to the gentleman. And his family has reported him missing since the day he was shot in the face in Pennsylvania. And, reading these articles, this shit isn't made up. It's trying to be pushed down by the government. So this is another reason why I say just make yourself prepared and do yourself a favor. Just take a step back from social media for like a day or two. Let your brain kind of relax a little bit, because there's so much being shoved. And again, it's from both sides, but watching some of the things on here, I have been very shocked to see all of these feeds where people are expecting, hey, I'm going to vote for Kamala because, race and everything. And I've seen these videos in New York where people are like, fuck that. We've suffered the past 4 years. I don't want another 4 years. There was a huge difference when Trump was the president versus what's going on now. I tell people, how much are you paying literally in the grocery store? How much are you paying for gas? How much of your paycheck every week is going just to barely put food on the table, clothes on your kid's back, and you're struggling. Basically, a guy came out the other day and said, if you really wanted to go with what inflation's doing to us right now, your minimum wage is about $33 an hour just to make it. And it's sad to watch what we're doing to our country just to push an agenda. And when that's happening, there's nothing we can do about that. I mean, we can vote. We saw what that did last time. It didn't fucking matter, So if you're not taking care of you and your community, if you're not reaching out to friends that you can sit there and go, hey, man, if the power goes out and it goes out for a while, who has a generator? Mm-hmm. Who has gas to keep that generator going? Who has deep freezers? Who here knows how to hunt? You know how many people I know who don't know how to fucking quarter a deer, don't know how to do anything. And you're like, do we live here in North Carolina? I mean, other than some of our local guys who can't fucking kill a deer to save their lives unless they got dogs, and you hear them running around and they're just shooting everywhere. I hear like one deer, 18 shots, and the deer's still running. I'm just like, what the hell? But how can you team up with people to be like, hey, are you good at hunting? Do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do that? Where can we put that meat? Who knows how to fish? The simple things in life. How do we know how to survive and go through a short period and be ready for the next?
And again, just to like the breakdown that we saw on the 13th of July, what's your combo plan? Have Blake and I, and same with some other people, never really but we've talked through, like, okay, hey, if this does happen, and if this happens, and then if we don't have comms, by this point in time, if comms aren't up, then I'm going to start making movement. You've got to I know that sounds stupid, but that has to be part of your self-reliance and your preparedness plan. I mean, you have to have those type of thoughts built in. And if it's easy because you all live in the same cul-de-sac, or your relative only lives 4 miles away, and and it's within walking distance, but you have to think that kind of stuff through, because to what you're kind of saying, and look, and this is totally speculative, right? But I think if you take a look, as Blake and I talked about, right, at the beginning, and we've said it before on the previous episode, and we're going to say it again more, there's this potential snowball effect. Maybe this isn't quote unquote deep state, and this was just the worst case of gross negligence you've ever seen in your life, right? The attempted assassination. So many balls were dropped. Well, okay, but that only got to that point either because they intentionally let it happen that day, or they've created an environment where it's, over the last couple of years, this is what it's built up to. So for whatever happens next, whether that's the world's largest cyber attack that no one's still talking about, I mean, like huge cyber attack, or people still without power, from a hurricane, or again, the next quote unquote, pandemic, or whatever scary thing they're going to try to, and no one's held accountable, and no one's even coming out there and saying, hey, we totally dropped the ball. We're your government. We're your elected officials. We're supposed to do better. So I guess what I'm kind of getting at is to what I just realized a subconscious takeaway from what you said there, Triple X, is, and this goes to Blake, and I'm going to turn it over to him, either by hook or crook, intentionally or unintentionally, we've all really started to lose our faith in institutions. So you better then, if that's where you were placing your faith, thinking they were going to get the job done, now more than ever, you better start looking internally and saying, there is no, Jack from Black Scout says it, you got to be your own hero. No one's coming to save you. You got to, now more than ever, I really do believe you better start taking a look. And, and the funny thing will be, if 10 years from now, nothing happens and everything's hunky-dory, or 100 years from now, or, whatever, that's awesome. But that self-reliance and that preparedness, the worst day is when you have to use it. Not when your friends tease you about it because nothing happened between now and the next election, or, if China started posturing, around Taiwan, or, or whatever the next crisis is going to be. Blake, did I kind of set you up a little bit for that one?
Yeah, I mean, well, and that's kind of the thing. And sorry, I had a little bit of stuff going on here at house, so I caught about half of what you said.
Well, and thank you for saying that, though, because I don't know if anyone noticed me. I heard something, and I was focused over there on a hallway, and I'm like, is that on my side? Because if that is, then there's somebody right over there. That was that was your side.
My little man's freaking out a bit, so I may have to jump out here. But
okay.
What I'll basically say is, that's the thing. As far as the community goes, as far as building up, it doesn't necessarily have to be the, hey, I'm making my garden bigger because I think the world's ending. It can be something as simple as, I'm making the garden bigger because I want my neighbors to have some food, and it'd be kind of fun to have them over for a nice grill out. Well, okay, that's awesome, because that's something people should be doing anyway, and that helps you in that preparedness, that helps you in that community building. You don't have to be the guy that's constantly going around going, hey, the world's ending, the sky is falling, so let's get prepared. You can go, hey, let's get prepared just because it's kind of fun, or it's good to strengthen those community bonds. So there's a lot of things we can do to help out our neighbors, to help out those that are nearby, without also kind of freaking everybody out, if you know what I mean. So,
oh yeah.
Well, and that goes into what you were saying, Triple X, it is kind of fun. How do you not know how to cook? Cooking is fun. I mean, like, most people need to eat to survive, right? So, so learn how to cook, learn how to hunt. Maybe you're like, oh, I hate that. We all know how many people say, oh, I hate guns. And then you take them to the range, and then they're suddenly like, oh my God, this was the best day of,
Yeah. And beyond how to hunt is then how to prepare that, okay, well, do we have electricity? Okay, we don't. Well, so do we can it? Do we dry it? Do we smoke it? Do we salt it? Do we make biltong? There's a plethora of different ways, and not everyone knows how to do some of it. And some people know how to do other things. And it's that exchange of information, and, getting around and doing it's kind of fun and community building anyway. I mean, that's realistically before social media, before TV, before all this stuff that ate the few precious hours a day that we have to build bonds. This is what we used to do as people, because that's really what we're talking about, is getting back to what it means to be human, what it means to be a man or a woman.
And I know this is going to sound kind of hypocritical because we're here on social media, but we're trying to use it because I'd rather be hanging out with whoever you are. I'd rather be hanging out with you in your living room or your backyard, having a fire, playing beanbag and having a drink and talking about this, or, George's port, or we're out fishing and I'm showing you how to do it, or you're showing me how to trap, or vice versa, like, hey, what do you got going on this weekend? Well, not a whole lot. Hey, if I get some pizza and beer, you want to come over and help me split wood? I've never really done that before. Well, then you'll be the guy doing the stacking, but at least you're getting around it and you're getting familiar with it and you're learning another skill set that you might need in order to survive. Triple X, I want to kind of bring that back to you because I think that goes back to what you were saying earlier.
And listen exactly how Blake explained it, and which I truly love. The other thing is, I'd say the self-reflection. How am I making myself a little bit better? Am I happy in thinking my learning has just tapped out? Hey, I made it to 51. What else do I need to know? I got this many years of experience, or do I sit there and go, hey, you know what? I want to keep my brain going. I want to learn a couple of new things. It might not be as much as I was doing before, but hey, you know what? I don't know how to do that. As silly as it might sound, honestly, I never knew how to drive a Z-mower. I have a ride-on lawnmower, but never a Z-mower. And my neighbor across the street, he cuts my grass, and he's like, hey, you want to learn? I'm like, hell yeah, I want to learn. Mm-hmm. So you know what? I got on it, and I learned. To me, it might sound silly, but I felt like a little kid cutting grass because I love my yard looking good. Mm-hmm. But I was learning something else to where, hey, if I'm off and I'm not doing anything, and he's got a bunch of yards to do, I can hop on it, cut those yards. He can weed eat, and I'm making a little extra money for me and my family just to throw into a can or a jar. But, I'm learning something that I just took for granted because I'm watching guys cut grass, and I think just having that little bit of drive still in life helps. But on top of that, it becomes contagious because especially if you got kids, the kids see, well, dad's learning or mom's learning, they're doing something different and come out of their comfort zone. Yep. It's not bad for me to come out of my comfort zone and learn something. And, it just helps. And that's just my opinion.
I'd agree with that completely. I think one of the most healthy things someone can say is, I don't know, and a lot of people anymore, they have trouble saying, I don't know. And I think it's because of the social media and the now culture and having access to everything. If you don't know everything, it's embarrassing for society, so it's that everyone looks through a fake lens anymore. And I love the ability to strip away that and just get back to what matters, which is community, it's family, it's breaking bread together. Because realistically, let's say that horrible thing happens, right? Well, northern Minnesota, maybe it's all right. But if you have a decent community, it might be harder, but I bet you're going to have some good stories. So,
well, and, just onto that point, like cooking and everything, you don't know what you don't know. I've been saying that over on Centerline for a long time, and because it's been in my hip pocket since I was a young private in the military. And there's a ton of, Triple X, you're absolutely right. You don't know what you don't know. I didn't know the first thing about, trying to recruit spies and conduct, intelligence operations in a war zone till I actually got, maybe some things in my background that gave me a little bit more of an edge or gave me a little bit more of a, I'm not going to get myself and other people killed slight, edge, but until you've done it and you start figuring things out and you've had good mentors and good people around you that are willing to share that experience, you don't know what you don't know. Right. Mm-hmm. And Blake, and to that point, that's what we're trying to do here. Look, there's things I'll be the first to admit you're never going to see on Millstone because so we're going to have a pretty basic kind of setup: food, fire, water, shelter, shoot, move, communicate, medicate. Some structure like that based on those categories, right? That's because there's so many subcategories underneath all of that. So food, what does that mean? Blake already just hit on a whole bunch of recanning, salting, what are you doing? But here, when it comes to I cannot bake like pastries, like cookies. I just can't do it. I don't know what it is. Every time I try doing it, I fail and it looks like just a mess. It's just not my thing, right? So I would love to, but I can bake pies. I've been baking, sweet potato pies and pumpkin pies for like the last 2 years from scratch. that I can do, but I cannot make cookies to save my life. But so triple X, you're exactly right. And it could be the same thing with automotive, right? You know, how many guys out there are going to admit that they don't know the first thing about their vehicles? Well, because they've made vehicles where you've got to have an electronic, you know, computer to even go in and see what you're doing. Whereas back in the day, and still to this day, changing your own brakes, your calipers, you know, that's still, some of that's your own oil. I mean, if you've got the capability and the, you know, in kind of an environment where you can do it, those are all things that every person should learn how to do, right? Jack of all trades, master of none. Maybe that's a way of looking at it. You guys agree or disagree with that kind of statement right there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we have to wear many hats in this world anymore, man. Like, you can't just do one thing. It's not the 50s anymore. It's not a homogenous community that everybody kind of knows their part and what they do and how they keep this grand machine called the Republic going. You know, now it is, we need to know how to.
Well, and I guess just on that, let me throw one thing out there. You got to check your ego at the door. All three of us are very skilled and knowledgeable in a lot of things, and there's a lot of overlap there, right? But I'm not going to sit here and argue with Blake about some ballistic coefficient on something. Yeah, I've been behind that for 30 years, but that's never, I know about grains, I know about windage, all that kind of stuff. But so even on that note, when it gets over 300 yards, 300 meters, I'm going to be turning to triple X and say, all right, brother, what are we doing here? You know, like, okay, you're behind the trigger and I'll be on the scope or something like that, because, you know, and that's, oh my gosh. Oh, I'm so embarrassed about myself. You know, triple X can shoot better at farther ranges, and Blake knows all the intricacies of, you know, all these different rounds and ballistics, and I do. Yep. And, you know,
and that's the thing, though. We all bring that different specialty to the table. There's overlap, but then there's specialty. And you know, it's the thing, when you can put more of those people together, the stronger your group becomes, the more likely they are to survive, the more ability you'll have to keep everybody together. So,
and that's
go
important.
Ahead, Triple X.
No, I'm just saying that's important. I mean, it's one of those, and as you know, you'll always hear people like, oh, you get a group of A type personalities together, there's always going to be clashing and bashing, and I go, I disagree with that. You know, there's going to be meat eaters, guys who, hey, I want to be the first one through the door. You know, hey, I want to be the one taking that crucial shot. Because you believe in yourself. But if Blake walks in and he says, I got it, I'm not going to sit there and go, well, F you, Blake, you suck. I should be getting it. You know, it should be, okay, I have mutual respect, and I have enough belief in Blake that if he had to take that shot, I believe he'd hit it 10 out of 10 times, you know.
Well, but that goes into professionalism. That goes into our previous comment about where we are and why people need to be more self-reliant, because our government has become egotistic, as you kind of said. It's just IGM. It's people who, I've got it, I've got mine. You know, so I've been in situations where somebody would argue that because they do want to be like, they want the 5 minutes of fame, but it's like, yeah, but we've all trained with each other. Blake makes that shot 10 out of 10 times in high winds and low visibility, situations. Tommy, you make that shot 2 out of 10, 1 out of 5 times. Doesn't mean you're a bad shot. He's just better at it. And we can't afford, this isn't the range. This is real life right now. So you go to the person who's got that demonstrated capability. And it may not always be Blake. Like I said, maybe Blake sucks when there's a crosswind, a high value. And that's where you come into play, George. And hey, no, sorry guys. We've got a full value wind right now. This is George's shot, because you know what I'm saying?
Oh no. Yeah.
Check your ego at the door, I guess.
Well,
no, go ahead, Blake.
I was just going to say, to that point too, to your example of Tommy only hitting it 1 out of 10 times. Well, Tommy's going to sit back and go, all right, well, I got to get better. When and this is kind of a specific to men thing, but when men are in competition with one another, we actually increase our testosterone level. We want to better each other. We want to be aggressive to each other in a way where we build each other. It's the old adage of iron sharpens iron. Mm-hmm. This is actually a good thing for us to call these out and go, hey, you're lacking here. All right, well, shit, if I'm lacking here, I got to get better. It's building each other up, looking at it, the community, both in the physical buildings and what you're trying to actually build to house your goods, to house your people. and then also in building up the people themselves. I mean, that's a huge part of it. So
Absolutely. I mean, as you're saying, it's more than just physical. It's the mental, it's the emotional. It's you have to take a little bit of everything, and that's why I say sometimes being a good leader, it's okay to listen, but take a step back and see where they're coming from, and then taking that deep breath instead of being like, "Hey, just shut the fuck up and do what I tell you." Unless the time, at the time, it's like, "Hey, shut the fuck up and do what I tell you," because this is a matter of life and death, and we're not dealing with that stuff.
Yeah.
But if it's in an environment where we can sit there and say, "Hey, I get what you're saying, and you know what? This is what we're going to do. You're going to be with Blake, and Blake is going to mentor you on this to get you better than being 1 out of 10 times, to help. And you're speaking out, so I'm going to take that as you want to make yourself better. You're asking for that help, and we're going to put you in a position to make that happen." Instead of beating someone down, going, "Hey, you know what? You'll never learn how to cook venison the way I do because I'm the best." And Blake is probably the best at it, but he seems like the type of person to be like, "Yeah, I make really good venison. I'll show you exactly how I do it." And
anytime you want to come by, George, like anytime you want to come for dinner, buddy.
Yep. No. So just on that note, I've learned a lot just about cooking just from hanging out with Blake, and that nature. But I want to throw myself under the bus just as a point to what both you guys are saying. You got to check your ego at the door. This is in the I think this was the National Guard or Army Reserve. Can't remember which one it was, but I was National Guard. But I was on a marksmanship team, and we were at. This wasn't the WPW. This was at a different match, but I came in like 5th at this match for handgun, and my buddies, like these guys. There is no such thing as a 5th place trophy, but they made one for me. I still have that in a box someplace. And so to Triple X's point, I took that as like, I let my team down and I let myself down. I was like, man, I thought I was better at this. And apparently I'm not. So instead of like saying, well, that was bullshit or whatever, I redoubled my efforts. And I'm not saying I'm Carlos Hathcock or anything like that, but I rededicated myself to learning that platform, and I became way better at it. Simply because I had a bunch of mates like these guys who were like, "We love you. We want you to be part of the team. You got to step up your game, because you didn't do as good as you thought you were, right? And sometimes you just need that kick in that cup check, to kind of get your head back on straight." Hey, I know Blake, you've got to bounce, and Triple X, we're getting close to that, and we're at an hour. I think I'm just going to do 2 things real quickly with everyone's permission. I'm just going to bring up the slide deck just quickly to show people what we're going to start doing next week. So next week, we're going to spend 30 minutes to an hour. Look, I hate to say it, folks, but what we're starting to do here, this is just all, free, and we're just trying to figure out how to make this work. Blake has got to bounce. He's got a little one and a family, so sometimes we might have some time constraints of our own. But next week, we're not going to teach this whole class, but we're going to go over it for about an hour, answering any questions people have. And then this kind of ties into what we've all just talked about tonight. I'm not going to, everybody can see this, but it's just the place to start getting your head on and start thinking about, okay, what am I going to do here? What am I going to do if this happens? What are the most likely or more probable? And then it gets into consequences, higher probability, lower consequences, higher consequences. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can look at any type of disaster, whether you think that's going to result from no joke political intrigue or war or a freezing rainstorm or a hurricane or an earthquake, or you're out at Yellowstone and and that thing explodes, and and the next thing you know, there's all kinds of injuries and you're in a mass casualty event. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, seriously.
Let's bring you back on to demonstrate that again, Triple X. What is the technique?
I can't believe nobody got injured in that. Honestly.
Oh, I know.
It's amazing.
Crazy. And that would have melted flesh off of the bone. I mean, that would have been just horrible. And then my last thing, though, is, I'm going to save this for next week. I need to talk to you offline about something, Blake. So that's all I got for right now. Blake, I know you're going to have to bounce, and same with you, Triple X. So I'm going to shut up, leave Triple X comments, and then back over to you, Blake, for outro.
I'd say one, I like the way it's going next week. If anyone thinks in reality that someone's being paranoid, and natural disasters can hit you in the gut just as hard as anything else. And to me, not being prepared, and when I say prepared, I'm not talking about World War III or, an apocalypse or anything else like that. But hey, if I'm not prepared enough to be like, hey, I can sustain from my family and myself for like 3 or 4 days, of what we need to make sure that instead of, hey, eating all the food in the house, hey guys, we're going to ration because I don't know when we're going to have this, but we have plenty of bottled water and we're going to be smart about it and have a plan and talking to your family instead of being like, what do we do, and kind of freak out. Again, it makes us better and it makes our loved ones better, and we're learning. And if we can make it a good learning environment instead of being paranoid about it, I think you'll be a lot more successful in the aspect of kind of what we went right back to what we were talking about before. If we practice drills, and I used to tell guys this all the time as a police officer, as a supervisor, field training officer, if you could just sit down in your head and you're driving back home, you're not in your police car, and you look at a car in front of you and you just say, hey, talk to yourself, hey, traffic stop, hey, they're not stopping, and you practice a vehicle pursuit, you're taking all that excitement, and it's because you're training your subconscious to do the right thing when it's time to do it. Well, if you're training small little things like that, I think it'll help you and your family, and your success rate goes up a lot higher.
Mental rehearsals, actual training rehearsals. 3, just a rule of thumb. This, doesn't apply to everybody, obviously, but approximately 3 minutes without oxygen. 3 days without, so 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, and then the first 72. And we'll tell a little bit more of the story, the backstory behind it. Think about 3 days in modern society without your cell phone, without the internet, without a cash card, without you able to drive a vehicle.
Without the ability to bring water up to your 13th floor apartment, without the ability to use the elevator, you got to use the stairs. And then think about all of the waste that humans make and no ability to move it. It's chaos. It doesn't take long. Yeah, it doesn't take long for this system to just absolutely cascade and failure after failure to take place. And you may think even in the countryside that you're going to be insulated from that. I don't know if you are, so to be prepared is best practice. Hopefully you never need to use it. And if you don't need to use it, at least you got some cool stuff. So,
well, and to your point, and even if you don't have to use it, find a way to make that fun with your family, your friends, and turn it into like a social thing.
Turns into a gardening club, or you go out and you go camping more often with your family, or, oh, God forbid, you turn the TV off, you sit down at the dining room table, you ask each other how your day is going, and you break bread.
Boom.
We're supposed to.
Yep.
So I guess with that, guys, thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. God bless you all. George, thank you very much for being here with us. It was
always,
fun
Blake.
as always. And we'll catch you guys all next time for the first 72. So,
all right. So next Sunday, I don't know what that is off the top of my head. That's like the 3rd or 4th. That might be the 3rd of August, I think, off the top of my head. Whatever first Sunday in August is, 1700 Central Daylight Time. I guess a spoiler. I got to talk to Blake about this. If you watch this live or if you're watching this on demand, think if you would like to see a slightly different time for Sundays. We've got to kind of figure this out. We're just tweaking it, and we're part of community. We're not saying we're right. We just arbitrarily pick this day, this time. Maybe there's a better day and time that would actually be more conducive for those who want to chime in and start learning a little bit more and start being a part of that. So, I just started to add that in there, Blake. I know you got to bounce. Everybody, thank you very much. I'll post this up on Twitter here. We don't have an outro.
So there's your outro.
Triple X walks into a bar. Hey, Triple X, maybe you can make us a little drum outro, sir.
Yeah, I'll work on that for you.
All right, everybody. We'll see you guys, everybody, next week. Thank you very much. God bless. We'll see everybody next week. Hey, until then, though, keep thinking, keep moving. See, Blake, maybe I'm going to keep that. Keep thinking, keep moving, never quit. That works too.
There you
Boom.
go.
Hey, don't forget, Mark.
On that note, good night, gentlemen.
Good night, everybody.